The New York Mets are finally making the call. Brandon Sproat is coming to the show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. It's the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season. If you want to find some of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the editor-in-chief. This episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for two to any golf tournament in the USA by visiting 5hewin.com. Full rules and entry, no purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament, ends October 31st, 2025. Now, Mets fans have been clamoring for it for weeks. We've been talking about it on this show for a long time. Brandon Sproat is finally going to come up and make his MLB debut this Sunday against the Reds. Now, we'll talk about in the next segment how the Mets will get him on the roster. What does this mean for the rotation moving forward? But I wanted to take the first segment to just reintroduce you to Brandon Sproat and tell you his whole story so that you can be familiar with what the Mets are getting here and what to look forward to this Sunday. So first and foremost, the Mets loved Brandon Sproat so much in the draft process, they selected him twice. In 2022, they drafted him in the third round. He decided to stay at the University of Florida, and they drafted him again in 2023 in the second round. Last year, Brandon Sproat was the crown jewel of the Mets farm system. He started off the year in high A, pitched to a 1.07 ERA in 6 starts before getting the bump up to double A, where he pitched to a 2.45 ERA across 11 starts and 62 and a third innings pitched. He then gets the bump up to triple A. And at the time, if you rewind a year ago, we were talking about Brandon Sproat making his debut for the Mets if they needed a live arm down the stretch to pitch out of their bullpen, because that is how good he had been. And he has 2 pitches that we'll talk about more in a minute, but he has the high velocity fastball and his changeup, which is probably his best pitch. And so I was talking at the time about how he could come up, just use those 2 offerings and maybe be shortened up to be a really dynamic relief arm. The problem, he got the AAA and didn't pitch well, had a 7.53 ERA, but a lot of us sort of just shrugged off that ERA. Okay, got the AAA, end of a season, first full professional year. It didn't go well in a couple starts, no big deal. But this year, those struggles continued. And that's where a lot of the top prospect shine sort of started to fade a little bit on Brandon Sproat. And that's how he saw Nolan, McLean, and Jonah Tong sort of leapfrog him in the pecking order. And then both of them end up making it up to the show first. Sproat, over his first 15 starts this year, pitched to a 5.95 ERA in 69 innings, only struck out 43 in those 69 innings, and he walked 32. On June 28th, something changed. And Anthony DiComo did a great story on this. It comes down to 3 simple words. Let it eat. Brandon Sproat came into this season, and it seemed like a change of identity where he wanted to pitch to contact, and he was leaning more into his sinker, and he was not really showing that same aggression. He wasn't letting it loose. He wasn't letting it eat. And so that was the big thing that was sort of preached to him from his coaches, from his dad, I believe. If I go back and you read that article, I believe he talked about how his dad always tells him that. And so he made a change, and he stopped holding back, and he just let it eat. And he went back to what has worked for him as a guy that pitched out of the bullpen some in college too, a guy that just throws as hard as he can. And the difference was night and day for Brandon Sproat. And he now repeats it to himself on the mound. He wrote it on the bill of his cap so he can always think about this mantra of just let it eat. And over his last 11 appearances, 10 of them starts that one game that he had where they pitched him out of the bullpen with an opener in front of him. He has pitched to a 2.44 ERA with 70 strikeouts and just 18 walks and 59 innings pitched. So I want to just, again, talk about the strikeout walk difference. Prior to letting it eat, 43 strikeouts in 69 innings. after letting it eat. 70 strikeouts in 59 innings. That is a drastic difference. And the walks as well, from 32 walks in 69 innings to 18 walks in 59 innings. Granted, the walk rate not as noticeable of a jump or a dip as the jump in strikeouts, but still improvements in both departments. And the ERA difference, massive. 5.95 ERA in those first 15 games, starts to let it eat. 2.44 ERA after he makes that change. His whip over this span, 0.93. Batting average against, 1.63. Or excuse me, batting average against, 1.63. Batting average against, 163. Guys are hitting below 200 against him since he has made this change. Now, Sam Dykstra did a great job organizing some numbers and putting them out in an article for MLB.com. So I did pull some of this data from there. I want to give him his shout out. The average fastball velocity difference. He has improved from averaging 95.9 miles per hour on his fastball to 97.1 miles per hour. That's a big uptick because we're talking about average fastball velo, and he's been grabbing more 99s. He's been grabbing more 100s. I think he threw five, they said in the article, 5 100s this year where he's touched triple digits. 3 of them have come in the last 11 starts. Only 2 of them came prior to that. Now, the whiff rate on his fastball has been, again, a big difference from 18.8% to 30.3%. And that has slashed the slugging percentage against it from 467 to 390. So throws harder. Guys are not able to square it up and drive the baseball as much, and they're swinging through the pitch a lot more, allowing him to rack up those strikeouts. He's also gone away from the sinker a little bit. He still throws it a good amount, but he's going to that four seam a little bit more. The big pitch, as I mentioned, for Brandon Sproat has been his changeup. Last year, Aram Layton came on this show. Aram Layton, who does all of the scouting and prospect stuff for us at Just Baseball. His top 100 is the most comprehensive top 100 you're going to find that's not behind a paywall. So I trust his analysis more than anything. And last year, he talked about Sproat's sinker and said that, or not sinker, his changeup. And he said that this changeup that Brandon Sproat has is the closest thing he has seen to Paul Skeen's splinker, which is a combination splitter sinker, because he still does throw it a little bit harder. You know, it's 89 miles per hour, 89 to 90, but it's got incredible movement. It's going to go arm side. So it's going to be breaking away from your left-handed batter, going into your right-handed batters. It's got plenty of drop to it, 30.7 inches of drop, 30.7 inches of drop, 13 to 16 inches of arm side movement. And the whiff rate on it, it's at 35.9%, chase rate 40% during this most recent span. Lefties have only slugged 294 against it during that stretch, and righties have not picked up a hit off of his changeup since he created more of a separation between his fastball and his changeup. The changeup velocity stayed the same. The fastball had the uptick. All of this you can find in Dykstra's article. Now, if you look at the rest of the pitch mix, similar to Nolan McLean, he does have his fair share of breaking balls. He has a sweeper, a curveball, and a slider. All of them give you different movement profiles. And so Brandon Sproat, sort of similar to McLean, is going to be able to have a deep arsenal where he can go between different pitches on a given start as he tries to navigate lineups and get through them multiple times. If he doesn't have the slider, he can go sweeper. He can, play them off each other. You might get used to that sweeper break, and all of a sudden he gives you a little more of a vertical break with the curveball, or it's a little more of a short break with the slider. So he has a lot of different options. He's not going to spin the ball as well as Nolan McLean. He's not going to throw his fastball as much ride up in the zone as Jonah Tong, but he might throw harder than both of those guys. And he has the pitch mix to be able to navigate things, and he has the best changeup of the bunch. Jonah Tong maybe is getting right there too. Jonah Tong's changeup has been a huge pitch for him this year, but Brandon Sproat's changeup is his real money pitch here that plays so well off of that fastball when he's letting it eat and it's eating up in the zone. So, and you also look actually too, one other thing, at efficiency as far as going deep into games. Prior to the let it eat line, when he was not letting it eat, prior to June 28th, across his first 15 starts, he only completed 5 innings 7 times, only got through 6 innings 3 times. Since then, he has gone at least 5 in 9 of his 11 starts, or 9 of his 11 appearances, and that game where he came out of the bullpen was one of the ones where he didn't go 5. So out of his starts, 9 out of 10 starts did he go at least 5. He's gone 6 innings in 3 of those starts, 7 innings in 2 of those starts, including his last one where he went 7 scoreless, allowed just 3 hits, 2 walks, and struck out 9. Might have been his best start of the season, which could have given the Mets enough confidence to bring him up to the show. This is going to be a really exciting week where the Mets are going to roll out David Peterson tonight, but then you're going to have Jonah Tong, Brandon Sproat, and likely Nolan McLean going back to back to back. We've talked about it on this show. The Mets have played better with these young guys because, yes, they've performed, but also because of the energy they give the clubhouse, the energy they bring to their stars. Brandon Nimmo talked about how it's so cool to see these guys experience the big leagues for the first time, and it puts everything in perspective for some of the veterans. And you have these guys that have electric stuff that are in a better rhythm right now because they've had healthy seasons compared to these veterans who are either worn down, like David Peterson and Clay Holmes, or they are still trying to find themselves off of their injuries, like Kodai Senga and Sean Manaea. So you're bringing some life into this rotation. Who knows how it goes? But I really do appreciate that the Mets are bringing all these guys up to just see what's going to happen here, because I think it gives them their best chance moving forward of adding some stability to this rotation. And Brandon Sproat had pitched too well lately to just keep him in AAA and not see what he has. Because if he comes up and looks anything close to what Nolan McLean has looked like, he very well can end up making a playoff start for you. You still don't know. So this is, a time where the Mets are obviously trying to win as many games as possible to theoretically get back in the division race, but just to angle for the best playoff positioning as possible. Either just making sure they hold off the other teams that are chasing them, like the Reds, who we're going to see this weekend. And also, you still have a chance to maybe make some hay against the Cubs and the Padres, and there is a world where you might be able to sneak up into that top spot of the wild card, where you host the wild card round, which would be so significant because the Mets have been way better at home than they've been on the road this year. So it's a combination of, hey, these might be your best guys to get the job done for playoff positioning, but also you have like 3 weeks here where you are auditioning everybody to see who can be in a playoff rotation, and Brandon Sproat deserved an audition. So what we're going to talk about next is how will the Mets line things up moving forward? Is it a 6-man rotation? Is Kodai Senga going to be part of it? We're going to go through all that stuff here in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by Zippix. Need a boost to power through your day without reaching for another cup of coffee or an energy drink? Well, that's where Zippix caffeine toothpicks come in. Instead of the crash you get from sugary drinks, Zippix give you a clean and convenient burst of caffeine anytime, anywhere. And if you're looking for that nicotine satisfaction, they've got Zippix nicotine toothpicks as well. I got to be honest, I was a little bit surprised that there's caffeine toothpicks, but it's pretty cool to have a toothpick in your mouth and you're getting a little energy boost for it, whether it's before a big meeting, long drives, or even if you're just watching the Mets late at night and you want to get a little extra edge without the jitters. They're pocket size, they're discreet, and you can take them anywhere. The flavors are legit, like this one, the peppermint, watermelon ice, you have the spearmint. So it's not just energy, it actually tastes good. If you're ready to try them, go to zippixtoothpicks.com and use the promo code LOCKEDON for 10% off your first order. That's zippixtoothpicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Zippix Toothpicks, energy and focus anytime you need it. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 15,000 subscribers. I would love to get there by the end of this season. So I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. So for this upcoming series, the Mets will have David Peterson pitch tonight, Jonah Tong on Saturday, and then Brandon Sproat on Sunday. That keeps Nolan McLean set aside for the next series against the Phillies. There was some thought that the Mets might pitch Nolan McLean on 4 days rest. We talked about that on the show a couple of days ago and how by keeping him on 4 days rest, they could squeeze an extra start out of him this season. So they can maybe get 5 starts out of Nolan McLean, have him set up to pitch a game 162 if it's necessary. And it also could set him up to pitch against some of the other teams that are going to be chasing you in the wild card round this weekend against the Reds. Then he could have pitched against the Padres. Well, you're not chasing. You're chasing them. They're not chasing you. But still, when we talk about playoff positioning, and then the Cubs. So he would have gotten in all those series. Now, if the Mets roll with a 6-man rotation, that might not be the case. But they also still have the ability to make him start on 4 days rest after this one from here on out, and he would get in all of those series. Not this one, but he'd pitch in the Phillies series. He would pitch against the Padres, and he would pitch in the Cubs series. So that's one thing to monitor. How are they going to handle Nolan McLean? Are they just going to say, you know what, 6-man rotation here on out, in which case you're only going to get 3 more Nolan McLean starts? Or do you maneuver things a little bit with off days coming up to potentially have McLean make a 4th start or even a 5th start? So that's still up in the air. But if you look at the Philly series, McLean, I'd imagine, starts on Monday. They'd originally announced Sean Manaea was going to start on Monday, but I don't know if they'd want to push Nolan McLean to 6 days rest. I think they'd potentially want to have McLean start the first game just so you have the ability to turn him around again quicker if you want to. Yeah, I think he's the guy you prioritize right now over Manaea. So I would hope that they go McLean on Monday, Manaea on Tuesday, but those guys will start the first 2 games of that series. I'm pretty confident in that. The big question at this point is what happens with Kodai Senga? And the Mets and Senga have been talking about the potential of optioning him. Now, we've discussed this on the show, but to reiterate, Kodai Senga technically has 3 options. He has never been optioned to the minor leagues. When you come over and you sign internationally, you still have options that can be used. We saw that with the utility infielder for the Dodgers, Ha-Seong Kim, who came up this year, got signed, and he's a little bit more of a younger player, still not the most polished hitter. So they sent him down, they optioned him at times, and they brought him back up. So you have that flexibility, but when you have a veteran like Kodai Senga who had a good market, they can have a clause written into their contract, as Senga does. That means that he can refuse going to the minor leagues and stay up in the big leagues just like any other player. Because technically, if the Mets wanted to, they could approach Sean Manaea and say, hey, can you go down to the minor leagues? They could do that. But it's unlikely that they would because veterans don't typically accept minor league assignments. JD Martinez was one example of it, but he signed whatever it was within a week of opening day, and they needed him to get at bats. So that's why last year he was willing to accept a minor league assignment. Then he got hurt on the minor league assignment, and it took a little bit longer for him to come back. But when it comes to Senga, this is an interesting one. You could say, oh, he's selfish if he doesn't decide to go down. But there's also a precedent that's set. There's other players that you have to think about. These guys, they have agents in their ear, and you're not really supposed to take that assignment when it's in your contract. It's a luxury that you have as a player. I kind of feel like he's going to take the minor league assignment. It's the way things are trending. And if he does, what that would mean for the Mets is Clay Holmes would pitch the 3rd game, I believe, of that series against the Phillies, which would then have David Peterson good to go for the final game of the series on 5 days rest. Technically, Peterson could pitch the 3rd game, but there would be no reason to. Either it's Senga or Holmes, I would believe, that would get that start. Now, the question would be, why wouldn't you start Clay Holmes over Kodai Senga? If Kodai Senga wants to say, why don't you stick him in the bullpen? The one thing that I think the Mets could go to at some point is a Sean Manaea and Clay Holmes piggyback situation, because we saw that earlier this year when Manaea returned off the IL. You had Holmes make a start, and then you had Manaea come in and they pitched the entire game, and it worked really well. That was one of Manaea's best appearances this year, if not his best appearance. So I think that's still an option. If Senga stays in the rotation, maybe they piggyback and have Holmes start on Tuesday, Manaea pitch out of the pen, or maybe they go another direction. You got to remember, Sean Manaea does have experience pitching out of the bullpen too. He was a swing man in 2023 before the Mets signed him, pitched out of the rotation and the bullpen for the Padres. So the Mets have some options. My guess right now is Senga does accept that option, or accept that assignment to the minor leagues, and you'll see again Peterson, Tong, Sproat this weekend, McLean, Manaea, Holmes back to Peterson against the Phillies, which would then mean that you would have all the kids ready to go against the Rangers, where it could be Tong, Sproat, McLean, or if you wanted to move things around a little bit so that you could get Nolan McLean potentially in another series at an earlier time, you could pitch him in any game, really. I mean, you could pitch him. Actually, he wouldn't be good to go on Friday, so you could pitch him on regular rest on Saturday and then have Sproat pitch the game on Sunday. I think this really is turn by turn for the New York Mets at this point. I think they probably have a tentative plan in place for the rest of this road trip, which is, again, the series in Cincy and the one in Philly, which is those different scenarios I've already outlined with whether it be Senga or Holmes making a start here. So I think that's what we're looking at. When you get to the homestand, they're going to create a new strategy. You could see Jonah, Tong, and Brandon Sproat piggyback. You could see a lot of different combinations. If Sean Manaea starts on Tuesday, he would be good to go to pitch, over the weekend on Sunday if you wanted to on regular rest. So they have a lot of different things that they can do moving forward with their pitching. It's just a matter of riding the hot hands and figuring it all out. I will say this. The Mets need to prioritize Nolan McLean and make sure they at least get 4 starts out of him, is what I would say. I think, who knows? I guess if you run away with the wild card, then you can just set yourself up for the playoffs, and maybe you do kind of slow things down for him. But I'd want him in a good rhythm, and I'd actually want him to make another start or 2 on 4 days rest, just because you want him to have that in the memory bank of how to go about that routine. He's done it a few times now, but in the playoffs, I think McLean's with the arm that you might be kind of running out there and really, trying to ride through that stretch. So we'll see what the Mets decide to do. Again, I think they've only looked at this road trip, and then you see what results you get, and then you adjust. If Sean Manaea pitches great, okay, he gets another start. If Sean Manaea gets rocked again, then who knows? Maybe he's in a position where he's pitching out of the bullpen soon. And it very well could end up being David Peterson, all the kids, and Clay Holmes. It's a 5-man rotation, and you roll with that down the stretch. It's very fluid. Now, when it comes to roster spots, how do you get Brandon Sproat on the roster? They can, basically option Justin Hageman or Kevin Herget, but you do have to make a 40-man roster move for him. The Mets had an open spot on their 40, but they just picked up Wander Suero to fill that spot, who was on the waivers from the Braves. The Braves optioned him. He had given up 8 earned runs in 6 1/3 innings in the big leagues this year, but in AAA, he was lights out, a 1.35 ERA and 46 2/3. Now, he does have an option. The reason why he was on waivers is because the Braves needed a spot in their 40, so they DFA'd him. But the Mets can assign him to AAA. So I wouldn't say for sure that Suero is going to be up and in Cincinnati this weekend. He very well could get assigned to Syracuse. He is not on the active roster right now. He has only been added to the 40. So again, that would fill your 40, though. You'd have to make another move for Sproat, and they could do that by either just DFAing Suero again if they wanted to, but they just picked him up. So maybe it's a Justin Garza, for example, that gets the DFA to bring Sproat onto the roster. And also, if Kodai Senga accepts a minor league assignment and makes a start in Syracuse over the weekend, that would open up another spot on the roster, the active roster, that is, for Brandon Sproat. Last note on the pitching front. Alexis Diaz, Edwin Diaz's little brother, has been put on waivers by the Dodgers. He's had a nightmare of a season. He was the Reds closer. All fell apart. Had a 7.80 ERA this season across time with the Reds and the Dodgers in 15 innings pitched. In the minor leagues, his ERA has been over 6. So he's been a nightmare, but it is Edwin Diaz's little brother. So we'll see if the Mets put a claim in there. I wouldn't expect that Alexis Diaz is going to lock back in and be the set-up man to Edwin down the stretch. It'd be a fun story, but I just would not count on that. So that's where we're at with the Mets and their roster right now. One other note, because I know there's been some confusion on this. I was confused about it and talked about it many times on this show without the real clarity that I have now, which is that Brandon Sproat and really anybody that the Mets have that's in their organization is eligible for the postseason. Perfect example. Wander Suero is not eligible for the postseason because the Mets just picked him up after August 31st. But the rule is, if you're not on the 40-man roster or you're on the injured list, when you get into September, you're ineligible for the postseason. But the little loophole is, if you are an injury replacement, you're good to go. And I've seen some people get this wrong, and I was confused by it as well. Andy Martino was on SNY, and he knew the fact that Sproat was eligible, but I heard him not really understand the rule still, which is not that, he said, pitchers get hurt, so someone will get hurt and he can take the spot. It doesn't have to be someone gets hurt for the playoffs. Brandon Sproat can replace anybody that has been on the injured list for the minimum amount of time that they're allocated to be there. So if it's a guy on a 15-day IL stint, you can replace that player or that pitcher. If it's a 60-day IL stint, as long as they've already spent 60 days on the injured list, they can replace that player. So Brandon Sproat can be the injury replacement for Griffin Canning, for example, with Canning having ruptured his Achilles. No way he's going to come back this year. So that's how you can get Sproat on the roster. So I wanted to clear that up one more time. You don't have to worry about if Brandon Sproat can pitch in the playoffs. But we still have a final segment here to talk about Mets versus Reds this weekend. And also, Francisco Alvarez is coming back. So we're going to touch on all that stuff. to close out the show in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. This grape ginger and lime flavored shot brings the iconic taste of a golf course favorite to a non-alcoholic boost. Perfect for sinking birdies or making great memories with friends, it's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Whether you're out on the course or just need a little extra push to power through your day, 5 Hour Energy Transfusion delivers the clubhouse flavor you love without ever having to leave the green. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, and the grape ginger lime flavor of 5 Hour Energy Transfusion gives you the best part of your clubhouse go-to without leaving the course or chasing down the beverage cart. Now you can amp up the fun even more. Just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for two to any golf tournament in the USA. Tee up that trip. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament. Ends October 31st, 2025. If you're an everydayer that always tunes into the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. It's our texting service. We get updates from me anytime news breaks from the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. Take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways and get the lineup graphics sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Francisco Alvarez will be with the Mets in Cincinnati this weekend. He's going to make his return off the injured list less than 3 weeks since tearing that ligament in his thumb and less than 10 days from breaking his pinky when he was on his rehab assignment. He was playing a couple days after that broken pinky. He's played 4 games since breaking it, got hits in 3 of those 4 games, homered in his last game, and he caught on Tuesday and Wednesday the entire game. So Francisco Alvarez has I guess you can't call it a clean bill of health, but he's good to go. He's going to play through some pain. He's got the thumb. He's got the pinky. He doesn't care. He wants to help out his team. It's going to be very interesting to see what it looks like. How is he able to throw the baseball? Our team's going to try to run on him a little bit to test that thumb because that thumb, I think, is still probably the greater concern on his throwing hand. Hitting, it seems like he's okay with it. It apparently isn't impacting him, but throwing that thumb, you got to wonder about. So that's one thing I'm watching. I'm going to be curious to see what his at-bats look like, but it can't look worse than Hayden Sanger. And the good thing is Luis Torrens has gotten on a good roll lately, so you don't have to play Alvy every single day. I'm imagining he'll probably catch a couple of these games, this weekend, and it'll probably be, 2 games on and 1 game off, that type of deal. But you do have a good option with Torrens. And I am curious if the Mets decide to keep 3 catchers because they very well could option Jared Young. I don't know how much Jared Young is going to play. Would they hit Jared Young in a big spot over Ronnie Mauricio? If the answer is yes, then you option Hayden Sanger because, as I've talked about in the past, you don't want to option Ronnie Mauricio because if you do option him, you lose that option for next year. He's already spent 17 days in the minor leagues. If he spends more than 20, you will not have that option for next season. So it does make sense at this point. I know it sucks for Ronnie that he's not playing, and you could say, oh, well, more time to develop. There's every chance that Ronnie Mauricio is right back playing in the Widow League again this year. If they wanted to, they could always stick him in the Arizona Fall League if they really wanted to give him some more time. They can get him playing time. They can get him at bat still. I don't think that you send him down for 2 weeks of at-bats in AAA just so that you can say that he got more playing time. I think they should have optioned him and retained the option on Luis Angel Acuna after the deadlines we've already talked about. They didn't do that. It makes more sense to ride it out. So my guess is it's either Jared Young or Hayden Sanger that goes down. If they want 3 catchers, it's Jared Young. If they want the extra bat, it's Hayden Sanger. Now, over the past month, as we now move to the Mets series versus the Reds, this has been a bottom 10 offense. They are bottom 10 in OPS, bottom 10 in runs scored. They have not been a good offensive team all season. A lot of guys that have been streaky. Ellie De La Cruz has been struggling for a bit now. You have Matt McLean, who was brutal early and has actually been hot his last couple weeks here, has a 981 OPS. So McLean's starting to swing it a little bit. Austin Hayes has been very solid for them this year, and he's got 3 home runs over his last 12 games and 849 OPS. Noelvi Marte has been outstanding for them this year after missing time last year with a PED suspension. Then he came off that suspension and was really rough, but this was one of the top prospects in baseball when he debuted, and now he's showing that pedigree again, an 844 OPS on the season. So there's some guys that are dangerous in this lineup. You got a new face since the deadline in Brian Hayes that went from Pittsburgh to Cincinnati and is an elite defensive third baseman. He's actually hitting over 280 since the trade. Never been known as a real good bat, but has swung a little bit better in Cincinnati, and I'm sure that ballpark helps that a little bit. So it's not a lineup that should scare you too much. I think it's a relatively soft landing spot for Brandon Sproat to make his debut, and I'm very excited to see what Tong and Sproat can do against this type of a lineup. But also, when you're playing at Great American Small Park, games can get lopsided in a hurry too. So you can't just assume that, hey, this lineup's not good, you're gonna handle them no problem. They can still score some runs on you at home. When it comes to the pitching, middle of the pack all year, bullpen okay, not terrible, not great. Rotation better than the bullpen, but still overall the numbers have been more middle of the pack for them as well. But you have some good arms going in this series. Andrew Abbott versus David Peterson. I believe those two guys squared off in June. Abbott went 6 innings, gave up 2 earned runs. They both were all-stars. Abbott on the season has a 2.65 ERA, a little bit worse over his last 7 starts, a 3.89 ERA. Now, you have Brady Singer going game 2 versus Jonah Tong. Singer was traded for in the offseason. Jonathan India went from the Reds to the Royals in exchange for Singer. He's had an okay season, but has been really good lately. Last 6 starts, a 2.41 ERA. In the final game, Brandon Sproat has not been officially announced, but we know that he's going to be on there. And the Reds have not announced a starter just yet, but it would be Hunter Green's turn. So I imagine we see Hunter Green. I don't know why they would hold him out of this series when he's their ace, and this is the team you're chasing in the wild card. So I'm sure we will see Hunter Green. On the season, Green has a 2.70 ERA in 15 starts. He was hurt in the beginning of June, missed until the middle of August, but has made 4 starts off the IL. He's been outstanding, has pitched right to the season ERA, 2.66 ERA across 4 starts. 3 of those 4 starts have been quality starts. He has still been eating up innings for them, has not skipped a beat in that regard since coming off the IL. So you got a Reds team that I think offensively is nowhere near the Mets, but they have 3 good starters going in this series with Abbott, Singer, and Hunter Green most likely on the final one there. The Mets are going to counter with David Peterson, and we'll see what Peterson does after his worst start of the season. Hopefully he can bounce back. Jonah Tong, first start ever on the road, so that's going to be its own adventure. We'll see how he does with that. And for Brandon Sproat, just first career big league start. So this series has a lot of big question marks, but exciting ones, and I really can't wait to see how it all unfolds. It's going to be really cool to see what Tong and Sproat can do back-to-back. Obviously tonight, still going to be good to watch some Mets baseball with David Peterson on the mound. But I think all of us are a little bit more anxious to see the final 2 games of the series to see what the kids can do. And then after that, we'll be talking Mets versus Phillies early next week and see what that series has in store. Looking at the Phillies right now, they actually beat the Brewers. Wow, they beat the Brewers in that series, huh? Hadn't looked this up just yet. So what is it? Still a 6-game lead in the division, I believe. I'm curious. They shut him out. I'm wondering who did it. Ranger Suarez, 6 shutty. David Robertson, Matt Strahm, Joan Duran. And they held the Brewers to 7 hits, no runs, scored 2 runs late to win. And if we go to the standings real quick, just to confirm, yes, 6-game lead the Phillies have over the Mets. And over the weekend, they are going to be playing the Marlins in Miami, my neck of the woods. I can go down there and catch a game if I wanted to, but probably won't be doing that. So we'll see if the Marlins can be sneaky and be a spoiler against them the same way they were against the Mets. And maybe there's a chance to gain some ground. It'd be awesome if the Mets could even just pick up a game so they could go into that series in Philly down by 5. And if you win the series, you make it a little bit of a race. But we'll worry about Philly when we get there this week. It's all about the team that's chasing you in the wild card, or one of the teams, as the Giants have now become the next team in line, 4 games back, with the Reds 5 games back. But it's going to be a hard-fought series. The Reds are going to give it their best shot, as this is the team that they got to beat right now. So you're going to get a good punch from them. You got to be able to withstand it. You got to see this lineup continue to stay hot, and it's a good ballpark to hit in, and some good pitchers that are going to be going on both sides. That'll be all for this show. I'll have shows throughout the weekend. We'll do another show tomorrow morning. So I appreciate all of you who tuned in and who will tune in then. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you want to be a Locked On Mets Insider, be part of our text and service, you can find a link in the episode description. Or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets.